All right, guys, we're super excited to be here. We're at the Turn Golf Club here in Draper, Utah with our guy, David Timmins. So yeah, you probably have seen that we signed David at the beginning of his final season at BYU, but it's been so fun to watch him play. So David, I know you guys made it to the national championship last year, and you guys have got off to a hot start this year, right?
Yeah, we got a good squad. We have everyone back from this year, so we got high hopes to get back to Greyhawk.
The BYU Golf team set a great showing in Hawaii. I mean, record-breaking, right?
Yeah, it's the new school record now, which is pretty cool.
You guys won, I think it was like 18 strokes and it was like a lot of other really good schools. It wasn't like you were playing against nobodies.
Yeah, it was a good field. I think there were, including us, I think there were like 5 teams within the top 50 there. So it was a good field.
Yeah, that's so awesome. So David, today we want to focus on hitting wedges. You know, when you've hit a good drive, you're in the fairway, let's say you've got 80 yards in. Like, what's going through your mind when you've got that wedge shot?
I think this is a big part what separates guys that can score and guys that are out there just having fun.
Yeah.
Is it comes down to a lot of their wedge game. You watch the guys on the tour, and a big stat is proximity to the hole. A lot of it is just attributed to knowing your numbers, knowing how far you hit different shots, knowing what different lies look like with the grass, knowing the green complexes. And I mean, you want to give yourself a good look at birdie when you have a short wedge into the green.
What are your expectations of yourself? Like, what length of putt are you hoping or expecting to have?
I mean, like, perfect world, you want to tap in, right?
Yeah.
It's always nice when you have a couple of those around, but you want a good look. I mean, you know the percentages. I think from 4 feet, it's 80% on tour. I think from 8 feet, it's 50% on tour that you're going to make it. So, I mean, the closer the better. That's why proximity to the hole is such a big deal, the closer you hit it.
We'd love to kind of have you show us, like, when you use certain wedges, when you hit certain shots, different trajectories, and all of that.
Okay, so let's do it. So a lot of this is attributed to Daniel Summerhays, who's my swing coach. He's one of the best iron players, one of the best wedge players I've ever met. And one of his big things that he teaches all of his players is to create this thing called a wedge matrix. It has all your wedges, and it has these different shots you're gonna hit. So we'll show you a couple of different shots.
You've got your 60, your 54, 50 pitching wedge.
Yep, so there's like 4 different shots. I know exactly how far I hit those shots. So there's like a money number, that's just like what feels comfortable to you. There's a 3/4 one, and I'll show you how far I take that back. There's a 9 o'clock one, I'll show you how far I take that back. And then I call this the summer special shot. It's called a no wrist hinge shot. And he's the only player I know that hits this shot. So I think it's kind of cool. I think it'll benefit all you guys in your guys' game too.
Okay. I'd love for you to show me how to hit some of those shots.
Let's do it. All right, so pretty much what I do when I do my wedge practice is I make sure I have my wedge matrix, my numbers. I make sure I have my easy brush. You're never gonna see a tour player that ever hits a shot with a dirty wedge. And that especially when you're working with TrackMan is like so specific on the numbers they give you. And so if you have a little bit of dirt on your wedge, it's gonna really screw up your numbers. In your wedge practice, I only really have specific shots from like anywhere from like 60 to like 130 yards. And I feel like anything shorter than that, it's more of just like feel. You kind of look at the target, you know how far it is, you see the spot you want to land at, but you don't have a specific shot for that distance. That's like your money range is from like 60 to 130 yards. That's when you know, like, okay, I'm gonna take it back this far, I'm gonna swing it this fast, I'm gonna have my hands in this specific spot on my club, I know how far I'm gonna grip up. And you can get pretty dialed knowing how far your distances are just by those simple things. So we're gonna hit a couple different shots with our sand wedge. I have a 54. Maddie's got a 52. The first shot is just like the money number I talked about. Surprisingly enough, like it makes a big difference of your elevation where you're at. A lot of it depends on the weather. A lot of it depends on the type of grass you're hitting off of. So I think what we have hooked up at TrackMan right now is 4,000 feet at 80 degrees. So it's pretty much just a good summer day in Utah. In my book, I have like my yardages for sea level. I have them for Utah, like in Provo, and then I kind of have like a middle number in case we're somewhere in between on the road. I'll just kind of hit my money number with it and we'll see how far it goes and see if it matches up. So that went 122 yards, and on my wedge matrix, I have 124 yards for that specific distance. Unless you're one of the top players in the world, playing on tour, I feel like that's pretty good. If you can get your yardages anywhere in between 1 or 2 yards on either side of the number on your book, that's going to leave yourself a pretty good putt.
I would consider myself a pretty decent golfer. I'm not gonna like go out win any tournaments, but like I can compete a little bit. But I don't have like that matrix. Do you think it'd be worth like putting in some time to try to identify those numbers?
100%.
Yeah.
Like, this is another shout out to Daniel Summerhays, but he's told me that like guys on tour, how they structure their practice is 30% of their time is hitting balls, and the other like 70% of their time is short game. And that's anywhere from like 100 yards and in, especially those shots like right around the green, putting and chipping. But I think this is a big part of it. It's just working on your wedge game.
Right. Because yeah, I mean, if you asked me how far I hit my 52, I'd probably say like 135.
There was a lot of confidence in that 135.
Let's see. Well, I mean, so now I'll hit one. I have no idea how far this is gonna go. It went 119. Let me hit another one.
Here, you need easy brush. You need to get those grooves clean, right? No, what?
There we
Come
go.
on, you gotta actually clean them, Maddie. There you
Hey,
go.
there's not real dirt. Okay, let's try that.
The
again.
plastic.
On the ball. Oh, I got that a little chunky.
So yeah, that first one I feel like you hit that pretty decent, right?
So like, I probably was off. Like clearly, I'm off on my yards.
That was like at least like 15 yards. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's like.
So like, if
that's
I had that dialed, like, because it seems like a lot of amateurs like me that they might think they hit it farther than they do, or things like that. And then you just grab the wrong club when you're out playing.
I mean, those are just shots you're giving away. What if there's like a bunker short or water short? You have 135 yards. You're like, oh, this is my club.
Right.
You end up in the water. You know what I mean? Just because it was kind of like a mental mistake. It's not because you hit a bad shot. Like you hit that one fine.
Yeah.
But it's just because you didn't know how far you're gonna hit it. And this is important to mention too. Is when we're doing our numbers, we want to look at carry number. We don't necessarily care about total number.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, because when you get onto a golf course, the firmness of the green are gonna be different. The type of grass is gonna be different. You could be hitting onto down grain. You could be hitting into the grain.
Yeah.
The ball could spin more at different elevations. Like the ball spins more at
You just
sea
wanna know
level
where
than
the
does
ball's gonna
here.
land.
So when we're doing our numbers, we're just going off of carry numbers.
Yeah.
I think this is also an important thing to do when you're like doing your wedge matrix, is you want to make sure you're playing your specific ball when you're making this wedge matrix. Because when we're getting so particular on these numbers, you don't want to be hitting those marathon yellow golf balls. You know what I mean? You want to be like, this is the part of your game when you want to get really dialed in. So I recommend having a shag bag of a bunch of your old golf balls that you play. It's easy enough to go pick them up just at the range, but it's really important that you make sure you're using your right golf ball.
Guys, just want to remind you, if you're liking this content, we're going to keep it coming. So make sure and like and subscribe so you can see all these videos that we're putting out.
So the next shot I have, it's called my 3/4 shot, and every time I hit the shot, I know exactly where on my grip I'm going to grip up to. So I like have these little notches on this grip, and I know that I'm going to put my left hand about an inch down from the bottom of the club, and I'll grab it right there. And I found this is like very broad, but I feel like throughout my bag, it's anywhere from 5 to 10 yards. If I grip up an inch like that and swing the exact same, it's gonna be that much shorter. Kind of how I feel it is I come back and it's all the way right here, just past, my left arm is just past parallel. And I know that's my 3/4 shot right there. My full shot is a little more back here. This is my 3/4 shot, and my 9 o'clock shot is just below parallel. Hit my 3/4 shot, I'm gripping up right there on that inch spot. I know how far back I want to take it back. I'm not trying to swing it slower. I'm not trying to swing it faster. It's just the same tempo. Carry on that one was 109.5, so like 110. On here I have 112.
Talk about how you initially came up with those numbers. Like, were you on a simulator, or were you out at, like, how did you like ultimately decide these are my numbers?
I just carved out a chunk of my practice time for a couple hours. I had my shag bag of a bunch of my old golf balls. I had my TrackMan, and yeah, I was just out at our range, and and I had targets set up like every 10 yards, and I just hit 10 shots from each one of these yardages, and I just took the average of all those numbers, and that's where I got that number from.
Wow.
It's important to like stay up to date on these numbers, because as you continue to go to the gym, get stronger, or as you're coming out of the winter, you may be a little weaker, you may not swing it as fast. You gotta like
Recalibrate.
Yeah, it's like your checkup at the doctor, right? You gotta check up your wedge numbers.
Yeah, well, I think that's something that I found so cool with players at your level. You try to make it almost as much of a science as possible. Players like myself, you're guessing so much. But for someone like you, like there's not a whole lot of guesswork. Like, of course, there's variables, weather, and other conditions that you have to take into account, but like, you know your numbers, and you can pretty much count on those because you've practiced so much that you can just trust them and then just like really trust your swing, right?
I 100% agree with that. Like, one of my favorite quotes is prior preparation prevents poor performance. And like, you want to do all of the dirty work in here on the range. So when you go out on the course, you don't necessarily have to think about that stuff.
For me, if I don't know if I'm going to hit this club 120 or 130, it's going to be hard for me to trust it. And then I'll end up not swinging like I should.
And it makes it even more difficult when you don't have that work of knowing how far your clubs go. Okay, let's see you hit that 3/4 shot. So like what I said, we have the same grip. So
yeah, so
like I'd probably grip up to that little red thing right there.
Yeah.
That's about like an inch up on the club.
Yeah.
And then like what I said, you want to keep your same tempo. Yep.
Maybe, yep.
So that's that. I would say that's like perfect 3/4, just past that parallel with your left arm.
So you said expect to hit this maybe like 10 yards less. So maybe if I hit this 120 before, hopefully this will be in like the 110 range. Is that right?
Yeah, mine's 12 yards shorter.
Okay. Well, maybe if I was a little better of a golfer.
How far to that first one you went? It was like 119?
Yeah, I think it was 119.
Okay. So yeah, we want this to be like probably like 110, like 108 maybe.
That should be better.
115.
113.
So a lot of this too is like figuring out what your different feels are. You know what I mean? Like your 3/4 could feel a lot different than my 3/4, and there's nothing wrong with that. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't have to be exactly 10 to 12 yards shorter.
It just needs to be consistent to myself.
Yeah, you just need to know, like, you don't even have to call it your 3/4 shot. Like, you just need to know what that a little bit off of your money number is.
Right.
103.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is just repetition, right? A lot of that is just getting those feels down.
Right.
So
Striking solidly every time.
yep, making sure you have clean grooves.
Yeah. My grooves were not clean on that last one.
Yep. All right, let's go down to the next one. The next one, I call it my 9 o'clock shot. And like what I said, my 9 o'clock one, it's not actually right at 9 o'clock. I feel it like just a little bit lower. So this is my 9 o'clock shot. Same thing, I grip up an inch. I maybe put the ball a little bit further in my stance. This is a shot I hit a lot when like the wind's like into my face, just because it like flights it a little bit lower. So the carry on that was 95.8, so like 96 on here. My 9 o'clock shot is 97.
Well, and it seems nice to have that matrix because it probably gives you kind of a like obviously when you first make it, you're probably just trying to get whatever's natural. But then does it give you kind of a target to practice towards?
Yeah, I mean, like, let's say you have 290 into a par 5 on your second shot and there's water short.
Yeah, exactly.
You could try to rip 3-wood, or you've put in this wedge work practice and you're like, I know if I have my 80-yard shot, I know I'm gonna have at least a 15-footer, make a birdie. 9 o'clock shot, Maddie, see it.
So you got about an inch down.
Yeah, I put the ball a little bit further back in my stance.
Because the goal here is to try to keep this a little lower.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's why I put it a little further back.
I'd be happy with that.
Nice, yeah. 87.
Sweet.
And you'll notice too, as you like start building this wedge matrix, that you'll have shots that go the same distances, right? Like my 3/4 60 shot goes pretty close to my 54 9 o'clock shot.
Interesting.
But a lot of this is like your decision, right? Like let's say you have a tucked front pin, you need to get higher with more spin. You're not gonna hit your lower 9 o'clock 54 shot, right?
Yeah.
You're gonna want to hit your 3/4 60 shot because it's going to be higher, more spin, but they both go the same distance.
Yeah.
So as you start building your wedge matrix, you'll notice how there's like similarities in the numbers, but you just have to know like my 54 9 o'clock goes lower than my 60 3/4, which goes higher with more spin.
So walk me through, let's say you're playing a par 4, it's let's just call it a 400-yard par 4, you hit a 300-yard drive, you got 100 yards. Let's say, you come up with your yardage book and with your wedge matrix. Like, talk me through, like you're in a tournament round. Like, walk me through exactly the thoughts that you're having looking at the green.
Luckily, when we play tournaments, right, even in local stuff here in Utah, you always get a pin sheet, right?
Yeah.
So you always know how far the pin is from the front of the green, you know how far it is from right to left, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of that comes with like course knowledge after playing courses, just like memorizing like green complexes and contours of the greens, knowing where like the backstops are, knowing where like a false front is at, knowing where it like rolls off the back. Like you gotta be thinking about all that stuff. You can't just pull a club and aim at the flag, because if you aim at the flag, hits right next to the pin and it's a false front, so it could spin all the way off, right? You have to be very strategic about knowing the green complex, knowing where you want to have your putt. And a lot of that is knowing yourself too. If you like left to righters more than right to lefters, if you like downhill putts as opposed to uphill putts, a lot of that you can control with what wedge you pick. For me, I know I love uphill putts. Those are normally the straightest putts. Those are the ones you can be the most confident with. You can hit them a little harder. I could be closer above the hole. I could have a 2-footer above the hole, or I could have a 5-footer below the hole. And I'm always going to take the 5-footer below the hole. So the last shot that we're going to talk about is the no wrist hinge shot. And like I said, I got this from Daniel Summerhays. This is kind of his patent shot. I know for me, and I know for a lot of my teammates, we've talked about it, is when we're coming down the stretch, we know we have to hit one close on the last hole to either win the tournament or to tie to get to the lead or whatever. You're feeling a lot of adrenaline. You tend to swing harder, right? Just because your body's more amped up, you're feeling a little more excited, and the ball's going to go farther. And so I think this shot is really good because it takes the wrist out of play. And I think that's where a lot of that extra pop comes from at the bottom, a lot of that adrenaline. So the no wrist hinge shot is I grip it normal, I grip it all the way up at the top, and it's pretty self-explanatory. You use no wrist. So when you take it back, you take it all the way back, and you don't want your wrist to break, and you take it back as far as you can. So take it all the way up, and you don't want your wrist to break at all. Like, you don't want it to be like that. Like, you want your wrist to be all the way straight like that. And that's the no wrist hinge shot. And this one you can get really dialed. Like, a lot of the times when I have a 50-yard shot, a 60-yard shot, a 70-yard shot, this is when you can kind of do that clockwork where 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, you can get really dialed with that, with this no wrist hinge shot. It's funky if you've never hit it before, but once you get it dialed, I think it's a really, really good shot to have, especially when you're under pressure and you're feeling a lot of those nerves.
Yeah.
So that went 97 yards. My no wrist hinge goes 99 yards.
Yeah, that's great.
Do you want to try it out?
This one looks like it takes a lot of practice, but I will try it. I didn't hit that great.
So even on that one, like, I could see it standing from here.
Did I still hinge?
You still broke it, which is it's hard if you're not used to it.
Yeah.
But like I said, this is great if you have a tripod. You can set up a tripod in front just so you can make sure, check yourself. I also think this is one of the benefits of the shot is it normally goes really straight. You're not dealing a lot with maneuvering like the club angle, if it's open or closed. You're not dealing a lot with club path because it pretty much just stays on that neutral path the whole time. So this shot, it goes really, really straight.
David, that was awesome. I can honestly say that I learned a ton in this short time. And this idea of the wedge matrix, I mean, it seems like a no-brainer. It's like, why wouldn't you try to figure out those yardages? So I'm gonna put in the time, get those numbers dialed. Another exciting thing that we've got coming up is that we've been working with David for the last few months, working on his collection. So we've got a few exciting things coming. We've got a polo and a crew neck sweater, and then also a hat.
So ever since I was a little kid, I've always wanted to turn professional in golf. it's always been my passion. It's always been my love. And I feel like now my game's in a position where I can take it to the next level. And so, yeah, this summer I'll be playing up on the PGA Tour Canada.
So the collection that we're doing with David, I mean, it's a small thing that we want to do to allow you guys to kind of support him on his journey a little bit. And it's all custom designed by you. We've been working with you together with our designer Paige. So we're really excited about that. So keep an eye out. Hopefully that'll be coming out in the next few months. And between now and then, you're going to see more of David Timmins. So David, today we're going to have you teach us a little bit more about how we can...
I'm not used to that. You just like edit yourself. Like, I'm going to do that again. Holy. Obviously, I need to do some work with my wedges too. Thanks, Alex. Forgot the easy brush, dude.